I've worked hospital security for close to 6 years. Night shift. The kind of job where nothing happens for hours. And then suddenly everything happens at once. 2 weeks ago, I was transferred to St. Dymphna Regional and Old Hospital on the outskirts of the city, mainly psychiatric and long-term care. The kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzz too loudly, and half the security cameras don't work. My supervisor, Mitch, handed me the floor map during my first night there. Room 301, third floor. West Wing is technically off limits, he said casually, but you'll want to check it during rounds. Sometimes things move. He didn't elaborate, and I figured he was messing with the new guy. Hospitals breed dark humor. It's how we cope. But sure enough, when I did my first midnight sweep, room 301 was dark and padlocked. A yellow sign read, "Maintenance do not enter." The weird part, the lock was new, but the door frame had deep scratches, like someone had tried to claw their way in, or out. I stood there longer than I should have, listening. I don't know why, just a gut thing, and I swear I heard something faint inside, a dragging sound, like someone pulling a heavy leg across linoleum. Thought I checked the cameras when I got back to the security station. Of course, the feed for 301 was black. That night, I started a logbook. I wasn't sure what I was logging yet, but something told me I'd need it. The second night, I brought a flashlight with me. Even though the halls were dimly lit, something about the stretch near room 301 felt darker, like the overhead bulbs were always half an inch from flickering out. Around 1:47 a.m., during my second round, I stopped again in front of the door. I wasn't going to open it, there was still a lock. But something made me kneel down and check the floor, just in front of it. There were scrape marks on the tile, fresh ones. They were thin, parallel grooves, maybe a half-inch apart, almost like fingernails. I slid my fingers across them, still gritty, like the dust hadn't settled. No one had mentioned this room in the shift briefing. No work orders. No staff had keys. And yet something was interacting with this door. As I stood, my radio cracked alive. "Hey Johnson, you down in West Wing?" It was Dave, the other guard on shift. He was usually posted on ground floor. "Yeah, just checking perimeter." "Why?" "Got a weird motion alert. Third floor." It pinged for room 301, but that room's, not in use. "You see anything?" I hesitated. "Not really," I said. "Might be a false ping." I didn't mention the scratches, or the sound I swore I heard just then. A faint thud from the other side of the door, like a heavy body collapsing to the floor, or falling out of bed. But 301 was supposed to be empty. No patients, no beds, no staff. That's what I kept telling myself, until I checked the footage from 2 weeks ago, and found something that shouldn't be there. Back at the security desk, I loaded the archived footage from the week before. Most of the cameras on the third floor were ancient grainy black and white feeds that stuttered every few seconds like a scratched DVD. Room 301's hallway cam was labeled Cam 3W, marked inactive, but I knew from Dave that it sometimes recorded intermittently. I rolled it back to 4 nights ago. 214 A.M. Empty corridor. No movement. No nurses on that floor. Long-term psych patients had been moved to another wing. Then, around 2:16 a.m., the feed jumped a full second skipped hand when the image came back. Someone was standing in front of room 301. Still. Facing the door, the figure was thin, tall, and barefoot, wearing a hospital gown that looked tattered. Head shaved, arms at their sides. They didn't move, didn't knock, just stood there. I froze the frame and leaned in. The timestamp was blurry, and the figure's face was indistinct. The pixels didn't render right. It almost looked like the face was smeared sideways like a glitch, but the shadow on the floor proved it wasn't a visual error. There was someone there, and then, a few seconds later, they turned slowly toward the camera. No expression, eyes that looked wrong, and Just before the feed cut out again, they smiled. Not wide, not creepy, just calm, like they were happy to be seen. The footage jumped once more and they were gone. I copied the clip and saved it to a USB stick in my locker, just in case. But I didn't tell anyone who would believe me. I wanted to call it a prank, a glitch, maybe an old patient who wandered off. But something deep down told me this was older than the building itself. Something was inside room 301, and it wanted someone to know. That someone was me. That night, I couldn't shake the image from my mind, the pale figure in the hospital gown, standing silently outside room 301. As usual, I started my rounds around midnight, flashlight in hand. The hallways felt colder than before, like the temperature dropped several degrees when I stepped into the west wing. When I reached room 301, I stopped, as always, staring at the padlocked door. And then I heard it. A whisper, soft, so faint it could have been the hum of the old air ducts. But it wasn't. I cocked my head and pressed my ear against the door. There were voices, many voices, hushed and layered, like a crowd speaking at once, overlapping and impossible to understand. Then one voice grew clearer, whispering a single word, "Help, ... My heart slammed against my ribs. I jumped back, gripping my flashlight like a weapon. The whispers stopped immediately. I radioed, "Dave, you hearing anything weird over there?" Silence. Then, nope. Quiet as a library. I wanted to check the door again, but my instincts screamed to keep moving. The hospital was huge, and if something was wrong, I didn't want to be stuck alone near 301. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the whispers in my mind. What kind of person or thing was trapped behind that door? And more importantly, why? The next day, I decided to do some digging. If room 301 was truly off limits, there had to be records about it somewhere. I found an old filing room near the staff lounge. Dust-covered folders lined the shelves, some dating back decades. After an hour of sorting, I pulled out a folder labeled simply, Ward 3, Room 301, closed 1983. Inside were handwritten notes and typed memos about the room's last occupant, a man named Samuel Crane, admitted for severe psychosis. The notes were strange. Many entries mentioned Samuel's violent outbursts and auditory hallucinations. One report stood out. Patient claims others visit him at night, whispering secrets. Staff unable to confirm presence, but report feeling uneasy near room. The folder also included a visitor log. Strange thing was, it listed no visitors except for one date, 12 years ago. The name on that date, Samuel Crane. The signature was shaky, almost illegible. I cross-checked with hospital records. Samuel Crane died in 1983. So, who signed the visitor log 12 years later? That night, curiosity got the better of me. I knew I wasn't supposed to enter room 301, but I needed answers. I grabbed my master keyring from the security desk. It held a dozen keys for utility rooms, supply closets, and even a few patient rooms, but not room 301, at least. That's what I thought, as I passed the West Wing corridor on my rounds. The light near room 301 flickered violently, and the humming of the fluorescent bulbs grew louder. The padlock on the door looked ordinary, but suddenly, it clicked open in its own. My heart jumped. I shone my flashlight inside. The room was empty, or so it seemed. The peeling wallpaper was stained yellow, and the old linoleum cracked beneath a lone hospital bed, covered with a thin gray sheet. No signs of recent use. But then I noticed the floor. Fresh footprints barefoot leading to a corner near the window. I followed them cautiously. The window was locked tight. Outside was the hospital's dark, empty parking lot. A sudden cold breeze brushed past me, and I heard that whisper. Again, this time clearer. "Stay." The door slammed shut behind me. The door slammed so hard it shook the whole room. I spun around, rattling the handle. locked. No matter how hard I twisted, it wouldn't budge. Panic welled up inside me. I tried my radio, dead air. No signal. My phone. No bars. It was like the room was sealed off from the world. The whisper came again, low and urgent. Stay. ... Double quotes. My flashlight flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed me whole. I fumbled for my lighter, hands trembling, and managed a weak flame. The shadows on the peeling walls twisted and danced. And then, in the dim light, I saw them scratches. Fresh and deep, running up one wall. Claw marks that seemed to stretch toward the ceiling. A sudden noise behind me, the slow, dragging scrape of something heavy being pulled across the floor. I spun around. Nothing, but the air felt thick, suffocating. My breath came in ragged gasps. I backed toward the door, desperate. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the far corner of the room. My heart hammered as the footsteps dragged closer. The weak flame from my lighter barely pushed back the oppressive darkness, but it was enough to catch the outline of something or someone in the far corner. A tall, dark silhouette stood motionless, framed by the cracked window. No face, just a void where features should be. I whispered, voice shaking, "Who's there?" No answer. Just the heavy, slow breathing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I swallowed hard. Something inside me screamed to run, but the door remained locked tight. Suddenly, the silhouette shifted. A long, thin hand stretched toward me, fingers curling like claws. The whisper returned, barely audible. "Don't leave." I felt a cold pressure on my chest as if invisible hands were pinning me down. Every instinct told me to fight, but I was frozen. The room seemed to breathe with a sinister life of its own. In that suffocating silence, as the cold weight pressed down on me, my mind raced to make sense of it all. Then, a whisper cut through the dark, clearer this time. "I'm not here to hurt you," it said. "I'm trapped, like you." The shadow shifted, revealing a pale, gaunt face, eyes hollow, but desperate. "I'm Samuel Crane." My blood ran cold. The man from the files. The patient who died decades ago. "I'm bound to this room," he whispered, voice fragile. "The others' lost souls keep me prisoner. They don't want anyone leaving." I felt a strange mix of fear and pity. "I can help you, if you help me," he said. "Help me how?" "To break the cycle." Before I could respond, the room grew darker, the air thickened, and a chorus of voices echoed from the walls. "Stay. Don't leave. Belong." I realized then, this wasn't just a haunted room, it was a trap, and I might be the next prisoner. Samuel's face was the last thing I saw before the whispers turned into desperate screams. "Choose," he said urgently. "Stay here forever, part of the darkness, or leave, and forget." I realized the truth. If I escaped, I'd lose all memory of what had happened. Maybe that was why the hospital covered it up. Maybe that's why 301 was sealed. I felt the cold hand on my shoulder again. The room seemed to pulse with malevolence. I had only seconds. I closed my eyes, heart racing, and I opened my eyes. The cold grip loosened, just slightly. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I forced myself to stand. "I choose to leave," I said firmly. The shadows recoiled, hissing like wounded animals. Samuel's face flickered, a mixture of relief and sorrow. "You must remember, and warn others." Suddenly, the door slammed open. Light flooded the room. I bolted out, sprinting down the hallway as the whispers faded behind me. When I reached the security desk, my radio crackled back to life. "Johnson, you okay? We lost contact for a minute." "There," I nodded, voice trembling. "Yeah, just a power surge." But deep down, I knew the truth. The cycle had been broken, for now. The hospital looked different in daylight, less haunted, less alive. I returned the next morning for the end of shift briefing. Dave gave me a strange look as I walked in, like I was a little less me than when I left. "You look like hell," he said. I forced a smile. Didn't sleep much. I didn't tell him what really happened. How could I? He wouldn't believe that room 301 opened itself. That I saw something inside. That the whispers spoke to me. That a man named Samuel Crane, dead for decades, begged me to remember. And the worst part, most of it was already fading, like a dream slipping between my fingers. I checked the security footage again. The file I saved, gone. The scratch marks on the floor, scrubbed clean by the morning crew. The padlock, back in place, rusted shut like no one had touched it in years. It was like the hospital had reset itself like nothing ever happened. But I remembered one thing, a phrase Samuel said before I ran. The room doesn't want attention, it wants silence. It thrives in secrets. That afternoon, I quit the job. I still pass the hospital sometimes. Still glance up at the third-floor window, just above the west wing. It's always dark, always quiet. But sometimes only, sometimes, I swear I see something move behind the glass. Not fast, not dramatic, just a shadow, slowly turning toward me.